All right, here we are. Welcome. It is the IGC Season 5, Episode 2. I'm here with Jamie Garrison. Just a couple things we'll go over first before we get started. Obviously, you guys can check out the website, intellectualgentlemansclub.com. We have a Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff, so you can find us on social. I always recommend you support our previous guests, so if you want to donate anything, just donate to them, really. I'm just doing this because. And music today is brought to you by Secrets, as usually is. So I just want to go ahead and get started. Jamie, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. So we met, it's been about a year and a half ago, and I came in because I wanted to get started in a yoga practice, something that would help both my body and my mind, and it seemed to be working out great for me so far. So thank you for that very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having space, holding space. And so I started off with some Kundalini, and then just kind of floated into some different classes, and then joined you for teacher training, and things have really kind of been exploding with growth for me. So
that's great.
Yeah, thanks. So just so people who don't know you, maybe you could give just like a basic background of who's Jamie Garrison and what are you into? Like what's your life path like?
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, I've had the studio for now 6 years. I've been a practitioner for now over 20 years, started in my late teens, and just have been seeking different I guess it's along the path, looking to find clarity and meaning in my life, and that's how I transitioned into where I'm at today on the yogic path. I'm a mom. I have 2 beautiful young boys, and here we are, just practicing, living, enjoying life.
Great. So before you decided to open up a studio, what was your thought pattern on, like, how did you feel like this was your path? I mean, it's not something really to be tread lightly with, obviously.
Right.
It's if for people out there who are listening and watching, I don't think that many people get rich from, opening a yoga studio. It's more about richness of the heart, from what I can tell. So
That's right.
Maybe expand on that a little bit, I guess.
Right. So my path, I have a psychology major, and I was on the road to graduate school, and took a pause in that venture, and it was during a time I was working at University of Michigan in the psychiatry department, always in the healing industry, and that's when I took my yoga teacher training. I was seeking something else. I wanted to deepen my practice. So I just took a pause in academia and started my yoga teacher training, and during that process I started teaching, and that was around the time I was pregnant with my first son, and it just hit me. I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I taught as much as I could then, and opening up the studio, it was very organic. I was teaching in a lot of different places, and they were all like further away from Dearborn, so my friends and family were asking for something a lot closer, and the original plan was to like create a space in my home in the basement, but with 2 little kids, I'm like, that wouldn't be very relaxing for anybody. So I found a place close to home, and it was small, and I had no idea it would grow to the community that it is today, and that I would be where I'm at today. But the organic growth felt natural to me, and just taking it one day at a time and learning each step along the way in the process. So I'm really happy where I'm at, and I feel fortunate that I'm in a place that I don't need this to make a living. I'm able to facilitate a space to serve the community in the yoga community here.
That's great.
Yeah.
The community, the Yoga Shala community, in fact, has really been welcomed me open arms. Everybody's been really great. It's pretty much what I was expecting to kind of walk into with yoga. I had played with it a little bit in the past, but more of like a gym type of feel. And going through some challenges in my life, I wanted to do something that would be better for just my overall well-being, body and mind. So I figured, let's get into a proper yoga studio and see what's going on. So I saw your signs out front forever. It was whenever I would drive past, going to my sister-in-law's house, it was just yoga.
Was it at the Warren?
Heights,
the Heights location.
Yeah. So for probably a good 3 or 4 years, I was looking at that sign, just like, I wonder what it's like. Wonder what it's like. So it was nice to kind of just jump in and just take off running a little bit. So let's talk about yoga a little bit, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, especially since I've learned a lot and been reading quite a lot about the practice of yoga. And a lot of people think it's religion. Some people think it's just like a spiritual tool. A lot of people I found think that it's just like the asanas, just the positions, the physical practice of it. So let's expand a little bit. The yogic overload, not overload, but like a overview. What's your elevator speech, I guess, for yoga?
Yeah, I mean, I think yoga is whatever you need it to be.
Sounds legit.
Yeah, right. I mean, the first access most people have to yoga is through the asana. They're coming to a class, and whether it's at a gym or at a studio or rec center, they're finding yoga through asana. And I remember our first conversation, and you were asking about Kundalini, and you came into it from meditation.
Right.
So it's whatever you need it to be, and to meet yourself where you're at in the practice. So I've heard throughout the years people saying, I came to yoga because I had an injury, or I want to become flexible, stress relief, things like that. And then they're like, wow, after so long, it's become so much more, and it's become a part of their life, and it changes people's lives.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, in so many ways. So I mean, it is a journey. It's what I am ready to explore and learn from yoga today, I wouldn't have been ready for 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's like, it's just each step of the way we're getting there.
Sure.
Yeah.
What it's helped me do is, you're talking about organic growth, and every step of the way. For my entire life, I've always been like, charge, full steam ahead at whatever's in front of me. And what yoga's helped me do is, overall, is just kind of soften around the edges a little bit and not worry so much about like the end game. Like I don't really even see an end game anymore. It's just like a constant transition, month after month, week after week, even throughout the day after day. It's, it's always different. Yeah. Some days are up, some days are more down, but it's all good. It seems like, I don't know, after going through a couple difficult times in my life, I feel like now I have like hardcore tools to like get through challenges in life. And I think a lot of people, myself included, would be like, well, I'm having a really difficult time, I'm going to start meditating. I'm having a really difficult time, I'm going to start, doing yoga. Right. Well, it's probably not the best time. I mean, it's not the worst time, but it's not the best time to start developing those tools while you're in the middle of a crisis. So, like meditation, I have had a practice for, over a decade now, and it's helped me with certain challenges, but I've also had it like at a low periods sometimes where things have crept up, and it would have served me at the time if I was practicing more regularly. Right. So developing the tools consistently, I feel like, prepares somebody for inevitable crises that one will go through. Yes, and I never thought about it that way, of starting something when you're in a crisis, because then when things are better, then people drop it. Mm-hmm. When it's It was like a crutch.
Right. And I mean, there's always going to be, cycles of crisis or sorrows or stress in our life. Mm-hmm. So we don't stop our practice just because we're feeling good one week or one season. We keep it going because we never know when, something, life's going to happen again. And then we have our mat or you have your practice. So
yeah, and that can constantly change with, the season of our lives that we're in or whatnot. Sometimes we need a little bit more fire, we're going to do a lot more vinyasa, or sometimes we need more yin,
right.
Something to cool us down, depending on where our minds are at. I know, like, for me right now, I can feel myself like wanting to build more fire because like the season's kind of cooling down.
Cold, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about that before as well too. So in the summer, tapering things back, more of like a meditative practice for me feels pretty good.
Right.
Because I feel like I'm a fiery person anyway. So building that,
heat when it's already hot out. Yeah.
It's like you
Too
set
much.
the life on fire, right?
It is. So, I mean, having that, being a witness, so observing yourself through it all and just being a witness, on the mat, if you're flowing one day, and I've had it happen where I was in a hot vinyasa class and it was a 90-degree day and I was observing myself in the practice and it just didn't feel right in my body, so that was, yoga helps us discover things about ourselves and what we need.
Right. Something that, coming in kind of cold, I guess, I came in for asana, I came in for meditation. Mm-hmm. Those two I just felt like were inherently hand in hand with, yoga.
Right.
But actually there's 8 different limbs that I really kind of investigated with more depth with you and, the group that went through the teacher training and a lot of the books that, I've studied now. A couple I feel are really important are the yamas and niyamas. And this is where things get a little bit tricky for people who maybe have like a religious type of dogmatic view of the world.
Yeah.
That, okay, this is where it becomes a religion, and I don't think of it like that at all. I think of it more as just like a philosophy, similar to how I feel like Buddhism is a philosophy instead of a religion. So the yamas being the ethical disciplines, right? It's like how to deal with the world at large, and then the niyamas, learning how to deal with yourself. So can you take a couple of those and like, I guess just pick them apart a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I find the yamas and niyamas a way to check in with the self. And sometimes in the middle of a situation or something that's going on in our life, it might be difficult to check in because we're in the heat of it. But I think over time, and the more that we practice, number one, being the witness and the observer to how we're behaving in the world and the decisions we make, it'll become easier to utilize them. But even if we just use them as a reflection and thinking back and learning about ourselves and about the world by applying the yamas and niyamas, non-harm, non-stealing, speaking the truth, living a cleanly life, whether it's the food we eat or, how we're moving our body to clear out toxins and to be healthy physically in our body. I think they're very important. And with the business side of owning a yoga studio, which sometimes throws me out of my practice because the business side is not very yogic.
Sure.
But I can operate my business in line with the yamas and niyamas, and then I feel good about what I'm doing if I'm staying in line with that. And for me, it's a measure of success if I'm able to stay in line with the yamas and niyamas of how I'm operating the business.
Cool.
Yeah. So you can apply it to any part of your life, your relationships, your job.
I mean, it's a good foundation. There are good foundations for whatever.
Right.
I mean, it seems like most of the religions of the world, honestly, have some type of framework that syncs up with them in some regard anyway.
Yeah.
Like treat yourself right, treat others right.
Absolutely.
Don't be an asshole.
Right. Absolutely.
So another limb, pranayama, breath control.
Mm-hmm.
Learned quite a bit about that. I'm still toying around with some different methodologies with it. Where do you feel like that helps your personal practice? Like what do you like to use with that?
Yeah, and I just finished a 6-month pranayama teacher training, which opened my eyes up to the big world of pranayama. So for the past,
I imagine.
Yeah, it was, so there's, a few of the foundational, breathing techniques, Ujjayi pranayama, we have Nadi Shodhana, and, like the deep yogic breathing. And, but this teacher training just opened me up to the world of pranayama and how it can be useful. So now practicing it every day and utilizing it in the morning, because I know that if I'm going to practice pranayama at night, I'm going to be up all night at 4 in the morning, wondering why I'm up at 4 in the morning, because it's so energizing. But so exploring the self through pranayama, you can learn a lot about yourself.
Go a little bit deeper than
Yes.
normal baseline consciousness. So a lot of these yogic disciplines really spoke to me because I like to play with my consciousness. I like to see what's kind of lurking underneath. I like to, I've been dream journaling for, over a decade now. So just kind of investigating, what's in there, and instead of just kind of taking myself at face value for like the status quo, yes, I'm a human. Am I getting along with my fellow man and woman? Yes. But what else is down there that's, potentially causing shadow to emerge in negative ways? So pranayama, it feels like to me, whether you're tinkering with breath of fire or something like just counting your breaths, something like that, they can be used in a variety of different ways. Like you're talking about being up all night, kundalini, right? Breath of fire.
Yeah.
But something like in the mornings when I'm trying to just like ease myself in through the day, simple breath counting, stuff like that works really well for me, and it keeps me calm and allows me to just kind of clear my slate.
Right.
Even from the dreams that I had the night before that I've been writing down feverishly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting too. I mean, like breath of fire, for example, for some people, it's very energizing. Like for me, if I'm going to practice it at night, it could keep me up all night. But for other people who, even folks who utilize medications, like what's the one I'm blinking now? Is it Ritalin? Adderall.
Right.
Yeah. So breath of fire will have a relaxing effect on some people, depending on their chemical makeup, where they're like, I practice that before bed and I go right to sleep. So, I mean, it can be helpful for so many people in a lot of different ways. And so learning about yourself through the breath work, I'm just finding it fascinating the more I learn about it.
Awesome. So you mentioned you just completed that 6-month pranayama course.
Yeah.
What else do you have in your yogic toolbox as far as like, I know you're on your 500-hour journey as well, and Yoga Nidra certified, and all kinds of stuff.
Continuing to chip away at, the asana. There's so many different ways to approach asana, and I never get tired of it. I am leaning towards more therapeutic methods in asana.
Like restorative,
and just, I guess just therapeutic techniques of the postures. And again, I mean, it might just be a season of my life right now, but that's where I've been, spending a lot of my time in trainings. The Yoga Nidra, the meditation, that's where I'm at right now, and kind of exploring it for myself to see how I can share it with my students. And it's a very small scope. I mean, a lot of students are coming, they want to move their body, they want to be in a flow class. So when I'm teaching restorative, that's when I have my chance to get in there and throw in a little bit of nidra, a little bit of breath watching, and, be there for my clients, and they can share with me how it's helping them in their life, and we just kind of explore it together. So that's been fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What inspires you on a daily basis to keep doing it? Everything.
And I mean, just how, I guess it's the changes that I've observed in my life, and clients sharing with me how yoga changes their life, it continues to inspire me to learn more, to see what else I can find out, what else I can share, shed light on for others.
Okay. As far as like, you mentioned you have a couple boys. You do a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
Some conversations we had, like, how do you balance everything out and run a studio? And I know you have a lot of people to help, but
Right.
like, how does that look on a daily basis for you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the boys are great. I mean, they're so used to this lifestyle,
Sure.
and I mean, we like to take them with us. So, I mean, I'm going to Costa Rica in two weeks for the first yoga retreat that I'm leading for Yoga Shala. The boys are really bummed out they're not going on this trip, but, sometimes we bring them. They're a lot of fun, and, they're really interested in yoga.
And what are their ages?
They're 5 and 7.
Okay.
I mean, it's wild. When I bring these beads home, they're gonna talk about each one, and so they're really into it too. So yeah, I mean, the balance. We have a lot of help. We have family who helps. People always say, "Gosh, you're always doing something." This is kind of how I operate. Lots of movement.
Same.
Yeah, but it's all passion work. I don't often feel like I'm doing too much. For me, it's a lifestyle. Like, this is my lifestyle. I'm exploring, I'm learning, I'm sharing, going different places.
When you do start to feel run down, is it generally because you feel like you're doing too much for yourself, or like others are taking too much of your time, or like a blend? I mean, what runs Jamie Garrison down?
It's an energy depletion. So not taking that time to pause. And it's because I'm interested in everything. So
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm gonna do this
relate.
today, and that tomorrow, and this tomorrow. So even thinking about it today, and tomorrow I have an entrepreneur TEDx, day planned, and it kind of hit me today. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I need tomorrow to relax and meditate and not go to this business, field trip tomorrow. So we'll see.
Okay. Speaking of business and that kind of realm, you just got done with Goldman Sachs program.
Yeah.
How did that help you out?
It helped me out tremendously. A lot of, what I found out is that most entrepreneurs are visionary people, have a great idea, a great product, and lack a lot of the business sense. And there's a lot of things that go into operating a successful business. Goldman Sachs, it's a scholarship program, there's an application process, so they're taking people who are already successful entrepreneurs and business owners and providing like this framework to kind of organize the business structure. So a lot of us, our eyes were open in a lot of different segments of operating a business. And, especially with the yoga industry, it's not really thought of as a business. It's like, okay, well, this is a community where people, gather. And from my perspective, I get a sense from my feedback from others that it's kind of like a free-for-all. Like, oh, it's whatever goes. And before this program, I had a really hard time, like, managing that. And the program taught me, like, where I stand as the business owner, and I have to stay true to that. And operate in that way, or else there will not be a yoga shala for people to practice at if I don't operate as a successful business.
Right.
So it's been extremely helpful.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what are some of like the roadblocks that you've experienced, like in your own personal practice and with the studio? What have you had to kind of overcome? What has like built your character through this process?
Right. I mean, there have been seasons where operating the business and the balance of family life have taken me away from my practice. And I think it's more of the physical practice because coming out on the other side of it, I realize all along that I'm always practicing something. So that's been a roadblock. There's been some, relationships within the studio where, like having the role as the studio owner, but it's such an intimate space, and becoming friends with everybody, because
Right.
everybody's so important to me, and then friendships are formed, and then I think there's like misunderstanding that like the rules or like boundaries. Yeah, boundaries. So I'm learning more and more. I mean, I have to stick to boundaries, and I hope other people do too. So that's those are some difficulties, but all in all, I mean, considering that I didn't like have a business plan when I got started. It was just more of, creating this space, and then it developed into a business. I think it went pretty well. It's going well, so
Very good.
I'm satisfied.
All right. Well, what are some misconceptions about yoga that you could maybe shed some light on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think they already have to be flexible,
All right, perfect. Yeah.
or in shape. Like, I don't have the yoga body, or, people are like, and I thought this, in the beginning of my practice and my youth. I mean, I, was, addicted to nicotine, for example, and I felt like a phony when I would go practice, and knowing that I smelled like cigarettes, and but I kept on coming back, and I've had clients share that with me too, and it's like, you don't have to, I mean, people think they have to be complete before they roll out their mat, and it's like, nobody's complete.
It's like I have to be in shape to go to the gym.
Right,
It's the same kind of thing.
So it's just like, I don't know where it came from, but it's like, I'm not flexible enough to do yoga. Is like saying you're too dirty to take a bath.
Right.
Just go.
Oxymoron.
Yeah.
Do you think that the social media world has any effect on that? Like, everybody's posting their most beautiful pictures and all these crazy contortionist type of positions and asanas, and like, how can people think realistically when they're seeing stuff like that? What would you? I guess what advice would you give to somebody if they're seeing that all the time?
Put the phone down. Yeah.
There you go.
Or like, come to the studio. I mean, you come to our classes. I mean, Yoga Shala.
So diverse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have a Pose of the Week feature, and it came up today in class this morning when I was teaching about handstand. I'm like, oh, we haven't had that on Pose of the Week for a while. And, there's a time and a place to explore challenging asana, and I think that's just personal preference, and some people are really into it, or they're gymnasts, or they just have a knack for it. And
but then you have people who are fearful of certain things as well, right?
Right. So there's either this like desire or this aversion to it. Right. So like we talked, there's a lot of asana is just one limb.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, when you go to the studio, we're practicing very foundational stuff, having fun with it, so it doesn't have to be extreme.
I have to say, like, I never go to a yoga class and I walk out and it was boring.
Right.
It's always something much different, and every teacher has their own style. Mm-hmm. With Pose of the Week, I really like that because it seems like people are designing classes to prep for this. A lot of times it's a peak pose, and so you get a lot of different variety every week, depending on which class you go. I mean, how many classes does the studio offer through the week now?
So we're probably up to like 38 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different styles, there's a lot of different teachers, so there's a lot of choices.
Yeah.
There's a lot of color there.
Yeah, and a lot of ways to approach not only an asana, a pose, but to approach your practice.
With a theme kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool. As far as some of the other limbs that we haven't really talked about yet, sense withdrawal is pratyahara. Mm-hmm. Is that how you say that? Mm-hmm. So what would you give an example of that?
So not being distracted or taken away from your point of focus, from, hearing a loud sound or being, shaken from something. At the studio, if they're doing construction upstairs with the suites and we're in the middle of a restorative practice, and let's say somebody were to get upset and say, I wasn't able to relax, they wouldn't be practicing pratyahara, where they could still be in their moment with all the stuff going on and be there at their center.
that when you say that, it sparks like a memory for me. When I lived out west, we lived in this home, and in my meditation studio that I just like set up and like had everything perfect, I sat down to meditate one day and I heard this like dripping noise. And it drove me crazy for months. It was to the point where I stopped meditating for a while. Like I got this whole room all set up, and now I got to hear this drip all the time. Never found out what it was. I was underneath, ripping out insulation and
you went to investigate it.
Yeah, I could never find it. It was just something there for me. It was like this roadblock to remind me, of that. So
right.
I think about that a lot, actually. The studio that I have down here is really quiet.
Yeah.
And I have like a furnace that kicks on every once in a while or something, but it's very peaceful, and there's not a lot of. I usually practice first thing in the morning where everybody's still sleeping, or
there's not a
just
lot of
rising up.
distractions.
Yeah. So, but even going outside, like in the summertime, I have a little place outside in the backyard where I like to meditate, and the planes will come. You'll hear the distant trains, the traffic. Neighbors that are out and about. It's
right.
just kind of remaining in that center, no matter what's going on, is I feel like it's important. It's good training for life.
Absolutely.
Because you're never gonna find a spot in life where, like, all right, I'm good. I can handle everything.
Right.
Nothing's gonna bother me. So.
Yeah, there's always movement and fluctuations going on, and being able to have that center and stillness and not be taken away from it is really important part of the practice.
Right. And I think that leads into the other couple of limbs I'd like to discuss next is the concentration and the meditation. So both very similar, but there's a little bit of difference between those. Like,
right.
So what is your kind of idea as far as like the difference between concentration and meditation? Most people would think it's the same thing. I did, like when I started training.
Right. There's a fine line. Dharana, having that focus point, whether that's focusing on the breath, so or having a mantra, like inhale so, exhale hum.
Like hyper-focus kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'm going to focus on my breath, and that's going to keep me in this place, or I'm going to look at this candle while I breathe. And when you get to the point of meditation, like the breathing's is happening, and the counting might even be happening, or the mantra's happening, but there's like the attachment to having to maintain it disappears because you don't need it anymore. Like you're there, you dropped in.
Like you were talking about earlier, just witnessing.
It's witnessing it, yeah. So, one will lead to another, and you might go in between the two, even throughout one practice. Deepening in, something might shake you out,
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be quite stable all the time. Like
No.
when I'm sitting,
No.
there's so many different things that happen, especially like over the years of practicing, it's, there's been such a wide spectrum, it's been hyper intense, it's been super relaxing, it's at times I felt like, I've been jacked into the divine, whatever that might be, whether it's the universe or God source or whatnot. Samadhi is, I guess, the last one that we can cover is, for me, it feels like connection with the divine. So like state of joy, peace, divinity. So I've tinkered with my consciousness quite a bit, and I've explored like these wide ranges of, connectivity, like unity experiences and things like that. When I think of like Samadhi, there's a float tank company called Samadhi, like one of the first float tanks.
Yeah.
And being in a float tank and just kind of like being just gone, you know what I mean? Or hyper connected into something. What does that feel like for you?
I feel that it's the ultimate connection to the universe or to whatever you're experiencing. And I don't think it has to be perfect. It doesn't have to be consistent. Well, it's not consistent. I think it can be applied to anything we want to apply it to. So we can bring it in when we're grocery shopping just finding that connection to where we're at and what we're doing and our surroundings. And for most of us, we need to step away from all that stuff, all the movement to get there. But bringing that state into one's life, for me, that's kind of a goal, is to maintain that connectedness throughout the day, throughout my life. And so that's what brings me back to my practice time and time again. Because then there's all the things that are knocking us out
Sure.
of that place throughout the day, which is life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding. So this might be a good time to segue into like a little bit of a branch with like Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through some Reiki training. Mm-hmm. You've been through a lot of Reiki training. You're a Reiki master, right?
Yeah.
So when I originally started going through the workshops, it was like something was happening. I didn't even know what was going on, but I could feel like rushes up my spine quite a bit. All I could just think about was like energy.
Yeah.
And so what it's helped me do is, part of the whole thing with Reiki is grounding yourself and allowing yourself to connect above. So like, I always think of like just meeting at the heart center and, things just happen from there. So how does Reiki, a lot of the teachers at Yoga Shala use it in Shavasana and incorporate it in their practice. How does that intensify things for you?
Oh gosh, I mean, Reiki energy is everything. And that center point you were talking about, like connecting at the heart center, the hairline, I mean, it goes up and down to infinity. So feeling that connection, that's where it's at. And so along with like the meditative and therapeutic aspects of like asana practice, the energy work, like the energy is leading me someplace. I don't know where it's gonna end. It probably won't end.
No end game. Right?
Yeah, exactly. There's no end game. So yeah, I mean, the energy is really powerful. We just did a Reiki 1 and level 2. We just finished up the second weekend, and there's a month in between, and the experiences from the group from the first attunement to the second attunement, and like the I guess energetic and emotional detox process from the attunement and from just the energetic clearings were very significant, and even brought up like a little bit of anxieties for people. You think if there's stuff that's like deep rooted and stuck for decades, like stuck, maybe it's sorrows or even pain or memories, and then there's this release. There's going to be a little bit of discomfort as it's working out, but at the end of it, like it's all love. Like the energy's love, and how we're caring for ourselves comes from a place of love, and sharing it comes from a place of love, and yeah, it's super powerful.
I can't chalk everything up to Reiki because there's been so many other things that I've been exploring for self-care now for about the last year and a half, a couple of years. But I feel like when I started with the workshop, the first workshop, after that weekend, it was about a month break.
Yeah.
Tanya did my attunements, and I got hypersensitive. It was crazy. Like, I'm pretty emotional, but I don't get to the point where I'm like weeping at things, but I found myself like now I'm like crying at movies and just like allowing just things to happen and not having to worry about where it's even coming from. I got really sensitive to even caffeine, cannabis, alcohol. Everything was like, I had to put the brakes on a lot of stuff that I was tinkering around with just because it wasn't feeling good. It was it was too intense. Large crowds, like going to a ball game or something like that was way too much. And just had to kind of hone myself in, like what is going on. I had to ask a lot of like personal questions to myself. Therapy, talk therapy, psychology has really helped me as well. Going through all that, I found a great therapist. It's been another limb that has been like really helpful for me. So all those together seem to fit really well. Like I feel like I've just been on like this organic path, like like you're talking about. So I like to use Reiki when I'm teaching. It feels like good to give back.
Absolutely.
I'm not into the teaching for money or anything like that.
Good.
But it feels great to be in a good place in my life where I feel like I've more or less got my shit together again after being through some darkness, and it feels good to just be able to share that. But at the same time, I don't feel like I'm giving my personal power away like I used to with things. Like, if I want to help somebody, I will give them all of me.
Right,
But
yeah.
I'm just pulling from source and providing that. I'm just like this conduit. And by doing that, it hasn't burned me out. So.
And it won't if you continue to operate
that's
that
what
way.
I'm hoping. I feel like I found a good formula, and I'm always up for learning new things and learning how to be and how to do things differently. I feel like that's the only, like living kind of in an agnostic way is the only way to truly be honest with myself. So maybe 5 years from it seems like every 5 years or so I look back and I'm like, you were such an idiot. What were you doing? What were you thinking? And maybe that'll be the case in 5 years. I don't think so. I think that I've slowly and consistently haven't been charging head first, like I talked about in the beginning of the podcast here, that it's been more soft. It's been just relaxing, and it just feels right. Like just somewhere I'm supposed to be, like I'm being guided.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, Jason. And I mean, noticing those shifts as they're occurring, or even looking back and noticing the shifts that come from the practice. And it's like you were saying, there's so many different tools to utilize. I don't think there's one prescription, for the whole world. I mean, people need to meet themselves where they're at and, dive into what they're ready to dive into, or else it'll become daunting.
And you won't even get it a lot of times.
You won't, yeah. So you have to be ready, and so yet we're never going to be 100% ready. So my advice to people is like, don't wait for that perfect time. If you have interest in yoga or meditation or energy work, I think the best place is to start at a studio. That's where you're going to be around yoga teachers who went through, many different trainings. Most of us, it's not just yoga teacher training. We have a lot of different backgrounds. A lot of things brought us to this point to be there in the class, guiding, providing tools, like you said, not giving huge chunks of us, but just providing tools, and other like-minded people who are open to explore different topics and different lifestyles and way to live. And that even can go into like the foods you eat and all different routines that you bring into your life, or it doesn't have to.
Sure.
Like it doesn't have to.
Yeah, it's like choose your own adventure.
Absolutely.
Truly. And some people I've noticed like are in and out of classes. They don't like to talk. They just stick to themselves or go to a corner and practice and then they leave. And other people like to, camaraderie. They stick around and talk. So, nobody's going to bother you. That's what's cool about it. Nobody's calling anybody out. Like, why did you leave? You didn't say goodbye. I didn't get my hug. Or, it's not a big deal.
Hugs are welcome, but optional.
Optional. That's right. Yeah.
And just like every asana is optional.
Sure.
Every transition and variation. So, I think yoga should be fun. It should be accessible. Taught by people who love it, who live it. Live some aspect of yoga. It doesn't have to be asana. And for as long as I've been teaching and holding teacher trainings, and there are a ton of asana that my body physically cannot do, and that I don't have interest in doing at all. And I teach what I know. I teach what I practice, and I think that's important for anybody and for people to come and practice what they're interested in. Don't do the things that turn you off. Do the things that light you up, bring you joy.
Right. Speaking of that and like turnoffs, right? I've heard quite a few horror stories over the years about like yoga teachers and some of the abuse that happens out there. Mm-hmm. What are some of the we can't just talk about all the good shiny things of yoga, and I think it would be remiss if we don't cover some of this.
Yeah.
What kind of dangers are there out there? Is there dangers of being hurt? Is there dangers of raising your blood pressure? Is
Absolutely.
there dangers of shitty teachers? Like,
absolutely. I mean, being hurt, yeah, I mean, I've torn a hamstring before, and, you know, people can fall out of poses, so, you know, be careful with your exploration. Yoga is designed to be a healing therapeutic practice, but yeah, there's a lot of dynamic transitions, and, you know, so be careful with that. You know, teachers, there's a lot of, you know, power issues that go on, guruship.
Guruship, right.
Yeah, so, you know, anybody who's in a teacher role, you know, kind of has that, I guess, would have that ability. And so, I mean, I always tell people, just be mindful, you've heard me say it, be your own guru. Like,
Right.
I've had teachers try to move my body into a pose that I know my body doesn't move that way. My bones don't move that way. It has nothing to do with flexibility. It has nothing to do with strength.
Great compression, right?
Yeah. And, you know, I know my practice better than any other teacher. And so even when I teach, I mean, you observe, you watch, you look to see if somebody's interested in your feedback or assistance. So, you know your teachers, you know, go out, try out different studios. You know, every studio has a different vibe. You know, check them out. Most studios have like a new client intro deal, or, you know, some might have some community classes, and, you know, see what works. And, you know, you can stick with it for a while and then try something new. But yeah.
All right. We mentioned diet. I've really kind of been exploring this as part of like this ongoing process for me, and I've tinkered over the years with, you know, different ways of being. I've done like a couple years of vegetarianism. I haven't really been like a carnivore. I wouldn't say like I gotta have red meat every day, but
Right.
you know, I definitely have been a meat eater through my life. You know, especially after I broke my leg a couple times, I was like, maybe I'm not getting enough good protein.
Right.
So probably I went through Sober October, and that really kind of made me think about a lot of different things, like my relationship to food, my relationship to mind-altering substances, and what's good for me. What am I pushing down? What am I repressing? What am I not seeing? So I've been pretty confident that cutting out processed foods and junk food is a must. And I'm pretty confident that dairy is almost a must as well to kind of get rid of. So I've been toying with this idea of like veganism.
Okay.
Or like a heavy-duty vegetarianism, or like paleo, or something in between. So I feel like the more information I get on both sides is that the human diet is for, you know, somewhere in between, I guess, where it's not excess for either. What do you, we've talked about this in the past too, if you feel comfortable discussing like what your diet's like and what you feel like is probably the most ethical way, or, you know, the way that makes you feel the best, you know, physically as well.
I mean, I think people need to try it on for size for themselves. Some people thrive on an all, you know, plant-based diet, and others don't. You know, so you don't want to cause harm to yourself. I mean, people hear it, everything in moderation. If you're going to have, you know, animal protein, to be mindful, and perhaps look for ways where you can reduce animal protein and substitute it with a plant protein. I've been vegetarian for most of my life. You know, for me, like, just hearing how things are made or processed, like, I remember I was 7 and I learned about how, you know, what hot dogs are made of, and they just grossed me out. It was like, oh, and like my friends' parents might be over at barbecues. They're like, you don't like hot dogs? I'm like, no, like I can't eat that. And I was 7. It just kind of grossed me out. And in my early teen years, there wasn't the internet. It wasn't a wide, it was really hard to find information, but I did find PETA and
Of course.
and subscribed to, they had like this binder back then, and I remember my mom was pretty upset because it was back where you could like order stuff and then they would just like bill you later. So I just like got all this stuff shipped to the house, and
Right.
I was, excited about everything.
Sure.
And I think we owed like $200 for it. But I started to explore, where foods came from and how it was processed. And I cut out meat in my early teen years. I stopped eating it, and
Anything with the face, you said? Right?
yeah, anything with the face. During both of my pregnancies, it wasn't a craving, but it was like the switch turned off, and I would eat fish sometimes, or poultry sometimes. Red meat I just can't do. Finding that balance though, I have tried a vegan diet for a while, and not that I eat that much cheese, but I also don't think the vegan cheese is healthy. It's processed. So then we're getting back to having whole foods in our diet.
Right. This is the conundrum.
Yes.
I'm kind of going under right now. It's like,
are we cutting out pizza altogether? But you can have a good pizza without cheese, but I think whole is best for anything, and just being mindful. There's a lot of great milks, nut milks and seed milks that I don't think we need, like cow milk, even for baking and things like that. We can have another show about baking. You can bring Kevin on here. He'd be happy to share with you all of his tricks and nut cheeses and
Yeah, I was kind of bummed I didn't make that workshop because could have used it over the last couple of weeks. I messed around with making some vegan chocolate and just kind of staying away from any of the animal products and seeing how my body was going to react to it. And I've done that a few times and it feels pretty good. You know, I just feel like that 30-day cleanse where I wasn't eating red meat.
good.
I wasn't using any cannabis. I wasn't using any alcohol. And on November 1, it was like a Saturday, had a family gathering, had a couple beers, and I just felt like shit the next day. I was like, man, how does this not like present itself like all the time? And your body, I guess, just gets accustomed to things, or you just don't recognize it. But my gut biome was just wrecked for a couple days even. And I was like, well, maybe I'll have a glass of wine. So I had a glass of wine last night. It gave me this splitting headache all night. I woke up with the headache still. I'm like, all right, so maybe I'm just,
Yeah. Taking pause like you did. You took pause and you are able now to notice what's weighing you down.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of people find that with the animal products and they eat, definitely the processed foods. It's just like this heavy weight. And when you're eating fresh, whole foods, you feel lighter altogether. And, taking the pause to see where you're actually sensitive. Because we won't notice if we keep on doing the same thing.
Yeah. Something else that really strikes me is like the whole factory farming industry, like the agribusiness and things like that. Monocrops aren't really great for the environment. There's no soil nutrition when you're having crops like this, and just the amount of abuse that goes into the meat products out there just kind of drives me crazy. There's a couple local grocery stores around here, like Pure Pastures. They have like true pasture meats. Like you can figure out like where this animal was grown in Michigan and how it was like created. You can go see the farm
where it lived.
And like you can buy like a whole cow or a half a cow or something like that, and just take responsibility for one death instead of like when you get chicken nuggets, you have like 50 different chickens that you're eating. Like that stuff is just kind of like running around in my mind. It just runs me in circles sometimes. So.
And it's like there's energy and vibrations and everything that we put in our body, and going to Pure Pastures and being mindful. And I was talking with one of the cashiers there a while ago, and she said this woman would come and like each week buy like pounds and pounds of chicken. And she's like, oh, well, it's raised on the farm and farm raised, but it's like, but is that really being mindful?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so now you're still contributing to this like mass production now of like free range, you know, it's not really taking in moderation.
Right.
Keeping moderation in mind. So
I think moderation is really going to be the key for me.
absolutely. I mean, you know, there is that, you know, energy and vibration in the food we have to be mindful of, and you know, having that gratitude for the nutrition that it's providing for us. So I think you'll be good if you keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think smaller portions overall, especially like of meat, and
Yes.
then smaller portions of grain probably, and you know, like you're talking about, a lot of whole foods, fruits and vegetables,
Yeah.
mostly vegetables really, nuts and seeds. You know, that's where I feel like it gives me a lot of energy behind it, instead of like weighing me down. Like, I just wouldn't want to eat like a giant steak right now, I tell you that.
No.
I just wouldn't.
I don't
You know,
blame
especially after some of the things I've been reading about and seeing again. And we've covered this in the podcast before. Like earlier on, we had I think it was episode 4. I had Jessica Hudson on, and she had a small farm. We talked all about food,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, the cycles that, you know, the standard American diet, the SAD diet, you know, and all that. So it's stuff that's always been in my brain, but you know, life kind of carries me away with different things at points, and I'm not a perfect person by any means. So, you know, just hoping to kind of rein in a lot of things, and just overall, yoga has really helped me do that. Like the yoga of life, right? Like,
Yeah.
just using it truly as, you know, a guidelines for just a lot of different things. And when I'm doing something that doesn't resonate with my consciousness or where I feel like I'm supposed to be, there's like, you know, the dude on the shoulder. He's like, hey, guess what, man? You know, you're gonna probably regret this, but just be soft with yourself at the same time. You know, so
Absolutely.
instead of like, you're a piece of shit, you ate all this candy or whatever, you know, it's like,
Right.
you just have to, at least I have to, you know, just kind of soften around the edges. I didn't realize it, but the last couple of years, like, self-forgiveness has been like
Oh,
a real
it's
challenge for
huge.
myself.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
like, I thought I just held resentments to other people and I'm all good, but
No.
it really goes both ways. I think if you hold resentments to others, you're just inherently going to hold resentments on yourself,
Yeah.
and then you're projecting a lot of it anyway.
Yeah.
So
It feeds off each other. Yeah.
it's not fun.
No, it's not. I've never heard that the SAD diet, standard American diet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty
It
sad.
is. It is.
Sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody out there on the interwebs, but you
Well,
know,
and I mean, you know,
it is what it is, you know.
it is. You know, my kids ask me, they're like, you know, mommy's a vegetarian, but we eat meat, and they get upset about it. They're like, you know, they'll ask about bacon, and I'm like, well, this is where it comes from. They're like, but I really like it, and it's like, you know, you can make that decision when you're a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
I don't prepare meat in the house. My husband will do the preparation of any animal protein that they eat, and you know, it's just, I'll explain it to them, you know, be honest and truthful, and then, you know, they can make up their own mind when they're older,
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. But again, no judgment, and stay healthy, eat whole foods, you'll be good.
Right on. Maybe you could tell everybody about maybe a specific client that inspired you or changed your personal practice, something that really sticks out. Anything off the top of your head?
Every single client.
What a cop out.
But you know what? I'm just gonna say, like, I was actually thinking about it because you know, gave me this list to prepare and look over, and of possible, you know, topics here, and I was thinking about it, and it's like every single person has been an inspiration to me in my practice and my teaching, and I care so much about every person who's like crossed my path.
It's really cool.
And has like showed up to Yoga Shala and shared their practice and shared their life at the Yoga Shala. So, yeah.
It really shows. I mean, it's the vibe in there is great. I've never felt anything but warm vibes coming off of you, especially. And I I've never heard a cross word really spoken about you. I'm sure that you've said there's Jamie haters out there. Everybody's got haters, you know what I mean? But you've given me no reason to, and I was very like wary of like where, you know, where I'm going to put my attention, where I'm going to put my intention, and you know, it's served me well so far at the studio. So thank you very much for
You're welcome.
For holding that type of space and creating that. It's been really important for me. It's been very much helpful.
It fills me up to hear that.
Yeah, and I'm sure I could have found that somewhere else as well. You know, I think this is a common, you know, path for like a yoga studio owner. You know, that this is what they're into instead of like get rich quick scheme. You know, it's like I said, it's not.
It's definitely not the business to get rich quick. That's what I learned in Goldman Sachs. I was like, oh, I should.
Yeah, I should have done this guy.
Did
right?
you know, shirt printing or something. You know.
High profit margin, yeah.
You know, it's just one of those things. I mean, it's a lifestyle. So the studio just kind of organically like became a part of my life, and I'm just open to see where it leads me in the future. I can already see shifts and where I may be in 5-10 more years.
Yeah, you don't seem as like a stagnant person to me.
No.
You got a plan.
Keep on moving, you know, along this path, and but something. I mean, this is what I'm gonna do. I mean, the next 30 years, this is it. You know, you're not gonna find me sitting at a desk someplace or.
Unless it's preparing for a class.
Exactly. My own personal desk, yeah, the creative space, but yeah, and I mean, what's contributed to it? I can't reduce it to one thing, and it can't be reduced to one student or one style of yoga. It's like the combination of it all, and just bringing it together for my own personal practice. It's just been, yeah.
It's great.
Amazing.
What advice would you have if somebody is out there listening and they have like a desire to open their own studio and create a community like you have?
Yeah.
We have listeners outside of Metro Detroit, so it's not going to be creeping in on your competition or nothing.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's, I mean, if that's your passion, go for it, and, you know, start small. I've seen a lot of studio owners, like, you know, take out these large loans or, you know, cash in their retirement, you know, for these big, beautiful build outs. And
triple down on things.
Yeah, and these gorgeous spaces, but, I mean, simplicity goes a long way. Starting small, letting things grow organically, and, you know, probably not going to be able to quit your day job for a while. Unless you have somebody, you know, in your family who's able to support you while you're living this like passion and service lifestyle. But yeah, go for it. Listen to your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could give yourself some advice, say the 18-year-old Jamie, what would you say? What would she even resonate with? What would she understand that you would want to get across?
I mean, probably personal boundaries back then, and being okay with having them. But I think that's just over time, with age, the more gray hairs you get, you start getting more boundaries too.
I feel that. Yeah. So my own personal boundaries too, you know.
And I mean, happiness is an inside job. You hear that, and you know, at the age of 18, I wasn't sure where I was going, and
Does anybody ever?
No, right? I mean, and you know, seeking out things to find fulfillment. When I mean, yeah, like we are seekers, and we're seeking out, like, I guess, more clarity and understanding of this world and connection. But back then I felt it was a lot more scattered, like just seeking like where my place is in this world, and to just let the 18-year-old Jamie know, you know, you got it, girl. Keep on going down that path, because I mean, it led me to where I'm at today, so I'm satisfied.
That's Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, I really appreciate you joining me here.
Thanks for
been
having
great.
me. I'm a little
Been
nervous
looking forward-
with all this stuff and the camera, but
Yeah,
next time I'll be a
it's
lot
little
more
different this
comfortable. Like, it's
Yeah.
over now.
Yeah, I realize with the lights and everything now, it's a little intense for people, but
No,
yeah,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I wanted to do video just to kind of make things more authentic.
Sure.
I mentioned in the last episode, but you know, there's not a lot of editing or anything like that. So sorry about all the ums. I'm trying to work on that still. There's another one. So, but seriously,
They just
thanks.
flow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for joining.
You're welcome.
Many thanks. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, how they can find the studio, how they can start practicing, and come see you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to see you at Yoga Shala. We're located on Michigan Avenue in West Dearborn. You can see Jason on Friday nights for Candlelight Yin at 6:30, and I'm there throughout the week. We have a lot of great teachers, Vinyasa, Yin, Restorative. Follow us on Instagram, yogashala313, and our website is yogashala313.com. We'd love to practice with you.
Great. Well, I think that about covers it. Covered a lot here.
Yeah, we did.
Been a great conversation,
Yeah.
as usual, right?
That's right, yeah.
Had a lot of good, interesting conversations over the last year, especially.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for a lot of wisdom and a lot of help along my path. So
Likewise.
keep it up.
You
Keep doing
too.
it.
You
Doing
too,
your thing,
Jason.
girl. All right, Jamie. Well, everybody, thanks again for joining us. You can find us at intellectualgentlemansclub.com, all the socials. Check things out. Some of the previous episodes, previous blog posts, and such. Take care. Hang loose out there, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye. Namaste.
Namaste. That's a wrap.